Hello, it's Deborah from Attic Lane, and today I'm super excited because I've got an early kit to share with you. This is the Simon Says stamp kit for August 2018 and it's called Mandy's Flowers. We've got quite a lot to get through. First of all, the papers. So this is a single sheet of tonic powder blue lace, and it is a luxury embossed paper, and it's blue, and if I move it under the lights you should be able to see the shimmer and the lovely light textured embossing on that card. There are two sheets of card. One is cotton candy and the other is white, and then we get to the goodies, apart from the lollipop. That's mine, you don't get the lollipop. There is a miniature, I love these things from Nouveau, there is a miniature crystal drops, and this one is called Bubblegum Blush. I'm going to put a little spot on a piece of white card so you can see. It's a really light pink, very soft feminine pink. There is a little piece of twine, and there is the most beautiful background stamp. This is a Simon Says stamp background stamp, and it's called Modern Rose Blooms. I'll hold it up a little bit closer so you can have a little look. It's a cling stamp. It's going to make beautiful backgrounds. I'm really looking forward to trying this. I love background stamps like this. Nice and big, so it should accommodate a large card size. There are shape sprinkles from Doodlebug Designs, and these ones are called Tiny Hearts. There's loads, there's 98 on this little sheet, and they're glorious. They're beautiful little shapes. They're so sweet. I love Doodlebug. And then there are the papers. Now the papers are just delicious. You just want to get some clotted cream and have these for dessert. They're beautiful, beautiful papers. I'm going to go through them very quickly, one at a time, to give you a chance to see. They have white backgrounds, and they have a flower theme. This one has little birds on it, and there are little butterflies, and there are nice geometrics. Just lovely, lovely paper. I don't want to cut into any of this paper. It's all so nice. And just when you think you've got everything in your kit, there's a huge stamp. This is a fabulous kit, and there are some great images here for colouring in. There's a fence, there are some lovely sentiments, picked with love, for your kindness, and then there's this round frame as well with a flower image around the side of it. And then there's, I like this little detail piece. So this would be a nice way to break up sentiments in your stamp. You could have a row of sentiments and this could break them up. But let's see what we can make using this kit. I'm making full use of that lovely background stamp for card 1. I'm inking it up with a Versacolour ink called Sky Grey. Unfortunately, I only have this in a very small size, but because I'm using my stamping platform, I can repeat until I get the coverage I desire. I've inked up one of my stamps, and I'm going to show you a problem with the stamp and a way that you can fix it. I've stamped it onto watercolour paper, and you can see there's a line, there's a gap, so there's been a problem in the production process, but the way to put that right is to use a Copic waterproof pen, and that means that you can still do watercolour effects without the risk that your ink will run. I happen to be using clean colour brushes, watercolour brushes, because that's what I have, but you could use colouring pencils or any other medium that suits you, whatever you have in your stash. Now that the image is dry, I'm going to cut around the outside. I've cut down my background ready to put onto a side folding white card, and now I'm inking up the sentiment that I'm going to use with Versacolour ink. This is clear ink that is ideal for embossing. I'm using black embossing powder on the sentiment and I'm going to heat set this. Once that's cooled down enough for me to touch the card easily, I'm going to use a Versacolour called Atlantic, which is a lovely soft blue, to go around the outside edges. I'm using 3-in-1 glue on the reverse of my design to secure that onto my white side folding base card. I'm gluing my stamped image onto the card as well, and I'm going to add some lines below and above, slightly as if they are behind the vase, so that it doesn't look as if the vase is just floating on the card. These lines will help anchor it onto the design. I'm just following up with a little bit of pen work. Once I've added some little blue hearts, my card is complete. I'm starting card 2 with a direct application of Versacolour Laurel Leaf ink to a piece of white card. I'm taking one of my circle dies and I've die cut a nice neat little circle out of the white card that I've inked up. Now I'm taking some scissors to rough up the edges of my circle. This is going to be a shabby chic card, so I'm also going to do the same with 2 sheets of paper that I've prepared in size from the paper pack. They layer onto each other beautifully, so now I can glue the top piece onto the middle piece and then I'll glue the whole design onto my white base card below. Now the ink has dried on my circle, I can add the sentiment that I want to use. It says "For You" and I've used white heat embossing powder to set that. I'm going to use some craft foam to add some dimension to my circle, and I'm just going to roughly cut out a circular shape. It doesn't matter if little bits pop out, you can cut them down. I can glue that in place on my card now. I'm taking the Laurel Leaf ink and I'm going around the outside of the card, and I've added a couple of little hearts, and I'm going to use the Bubblegum Nouveau drops to add a little bit of interest around the outside edges of my card, and that's it finished. Card 3, I'm going to use some of these very useful inch-wide inks in different colours to create strips down the background stamp. This time I'm going to take a white piece of card and I'm going to position it directly onto the background stamp with all the ink on it, and I'm going to press thoroughly to make sure that I get a good coverage and I get lovely strips of colour. I'm going to cut these down and I'm going to use them to make a line of colour across a white background. I'm going to add a little bit of interest to these strips with a little fishtail at the bottom of each of them, and you can see I start with one, I work out where I want the cut to be, and then I just use that as a template for all of the other ones. You don't need to draw the lines, you just need to draw the dot in the centre and then cut from the extreme corner into your pencil line dot. I've got a piece of white side folding card and I'm going to faff around with these strips for a little while and decide which order I want them to sit in, and then I'm going to decide the height at which I want them to go, and I'm going to glue them into place. Any overlap isn't a problem, I will simply cut it off. I have a piece of black card which I've inked up with a sentiment, and I'm using white embossing powder and I will heat set this. I'm going to cut this down to the right length for my card and I'm going to apply it to the top with a line of glue. I'm adding a little fishtail to this piece as well. That keeps the theme going through the whole card. And with that my card is finished. I'm using the beautiful Tonic Studio blue textured card and I'm going to cut across it. I've got 2 pieces of card that I've cut the same size that I know will fit on one of my base folding cards, and if I do it this way and layer them both up and cut through them both at the same time, I will get exactly the right angle, and then I can actually use this to create 2 cards with an angle through them. I'm going to use the one on the right, and I'm using one of the cream cards that I've cut down from the kit to create a card base, and I'm going to glue these into position. I think those colours complement each other absolutely beautifully. I have a sentiment that I've created in the same way as I did on the previous card, and I'm going to make sure that I get the angles right on this before I cut it down, and then I can glue the sentiment into position on the card. I'm going to use those little hearts again, and this time I've got 2 white hearts and I'm adding them just to the end. And with that, my card is finished. Card 5 is going to be a little bit different. I want to use that little strip that I pointed out when I was looking at the contents of the kit, and I'm going to show you a way to do second and third generation stamping. I've got 2 colours of ink. I've got a blue and a green because they're my favourite colours, and they also match one of the other sheets of paper that I'm going to use to make this card. And what I'm doing is inking up my stamp, and then I'm pressing it down 2 or 3 times so you get a faded effect after the first impression. And I'm switching between the blue on the left and the green on the right, and each time I clean my stamp down with a soft cloth. This finished effect is very pretty. Now I'm inking up a sentiment using black VersaFine ink onto a piece of plain white card. This is going to form the sentiment across the whole front of the card, and I'm using my craft foam again to add dimension and raise this sentiment to the front, and when it's all layered and matted and stuck in place, that's how the finished card looks. For card 6 we're going to use the background stamp again, and I'm using a pink shimmer Delicata ink that was in a previous Simon Says stamp kit, and I will provide a link to it below the video. This time I'm only going to ink up 2 panels on my background stamp because I want to leave the centre blank. I don't need ink in the centre of this design. I'm pressing plain white card onto my background stamp, and you can see the beautiful shimmer on that pink ink. This is a piece of normal tracing paper, and I'm taking one of the stamps from the set and I'm just putting a little bit of cushioning underneath it to help me stamp the image nicely and crisply, and I'm using a brown ink to stamp this image. I've got a piece of pink card from the kit which I've cut down to size so that the tracing paper fits just on top of it perfectly, and I've glued the tracing paper to the top of the pink card. I've used the twine to go around the top edge and tied a bow, and I've added craft foam, leaving a gap between the top and the bottom so that the twine can go through without adding any bulk to that top piece. I've glued the background into position, and now I can glue my top piece onto that. And that's my card complete. It's a lovely soft combination of brown and pink. They work so beautifully together. I'm going to put the card down so you can have a little look at it, but watch out for the neat freak hand coming in and just tweaking it. I've begun card 7 with a panel stuck down the left hand side, and I've cut one of the yellow pieces of paper with the birds on it, and I've inked around the outside edge and I've glued that into position as well. I've taken a selection of the sentiments from the stamp set because I wanted to try and use all of these, and they actually make quite a nice little phrase when you string them all together. So I've inked them up using blue ink, and I'm going to cut these down into 4 strips. I'm going to glue them in position, and my sentiment reads, "Thank you for your kindness, for your love, for everything." And I think that's a nice way to use up those tiny little sentiments that are included in this kit. I'm going to add 4 hearts to the left hand side of each of my word panels, and with that my card is finished. Card 8 is a lovely soft pink again. I've cut down one of the pieces of paper to size so that it will fit on a top folding white base card, and I'm going to glue that down. I've also cut a tag out of the pink card, and I've added some sewing to the top of it, just 4 lines of zigzag and plain stitch. That adds a little bit of interest to that card, and I've cut a fishtail in the bottom, and now I can glue it into position along with a sentiment that I've already prepared on black with white embossing powder. And I've coloured up another of the images, and I'm going to position this just slightly above the sentiment. Again, it anchors the image on the card and it doesn't look as if it's left floating. I deliberately coloured my image in grey and pink because those are colours on the background piece of paper. When you're thinking about designing your cards, think of ways that you can pull all the colours in together and have a colour palette in your head when you begin. 2 little pink hearts complete this card. Card 9 uses the hoop stamp, and I've coloured in the images with 2 different colours of ink, and I'm going to show you how you can get a better coloured image. This one is very flat in comparison to the other 2. It looks very one-dimensional. The way to get over that is to add deeper colour, and these stamps really help you achieve that because you add the colour where you see the lines. So there are various lines in these stamps to indicate folds in the petals of the flower, and they are your guide to show you where to colour deeper. I want to add a sentiment inside the hoop, but I haven't got an awful lot of space, so look away if you're squeamish, but I'm cutting down one of the stamps. It's absolutely fine, I can still use it as it was originally intended, but it allows me to add my sentiment into the centre of that hoop. I've stamped it up with black ink. It says "With Love." I'm going to glue my hoop onto a card that I've already prepared with a sheet of paper from the pack, the sheet that has the writing effect on it. And now I can glue on the extra little flowers that I stamped, coloured and then cut. To finish my card, I'm going to take a Nouveau clear glitter pen. This actually came in one of the previous Simon Says stamp kits, and I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer and shine inside the lines of the hoop, and then I'm going to go over just the leaves. Just adds a little bit of sparkle to a quite pretty card. Let's see if we can show you that shimmer. I don't know if it really picks it up on the camera, but there is shimmer there. For our final card, I'm using 2 brown inks. There's a pale brown and a sort of a medium dark brown, and I'm just going to randomly add the ink to the background stamp. I want to get a mottled ink effect. I don't want solid ink. And I'm pressing a piece of plain white cardstock onto that, but I want it not to be completely covered in the image. I want it to stop just below the bottom, which is exactly the effect that I've achieved there. I'm inking up one of the sentiments with black Versamark ink, and I'm bringing in 3 of the images which I've stamped, coloured and cut out. I have a tiny little bit of twine left, so I'm going to take that and create a little bow around one of the pots. I'm not going to cut off all of the excess because I quite like the idea of that being visible over the top of the other 2 pots as well. I've got some craft foam and I'm going to back my image with the foam. So the first 2 little pots are going to be glued directly onto the base card, and then the final little pot will stand slightly proud of both of those. There's some overhang at both ends of the card. That's no problem, I will just trim it down. And that's my card finished. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. As always, you know I appreciate your time. I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all of the cards that we've made today, and I hope we'll see each other again soon. In the meantime, take care.